honestly just a matter of getting discovered in a way that isn't. What? I thought you quit.
Hello everyone and welcome to another video, but a different type of video. Not going to be talking about Lane Smash. Today is a Dubnus discussion video. And to kick us off, I actually am using probably a lot of numbers. And what this is going to be about, okay, is really simple, actually. It's the impact on population, the player base of Emerald, caused by the Arsenal update. As you can see, we've got 3 tabs at the bottom. Fraggers' formula, which I'll explain later on. But really the 2 main sheets here, before the Arsenal update and after the Arsenal update. Okay. Now, the before Arsenal update is from the 23rd of March to about the 30th of March. Okay. And I'll leave a link to all of this in the description below. We use the ps2alerts.com website as our source, and for every alert that we have included, the 16th of March to 23rd of March, and then the 30th of March to the 4th of April, for every alert that we've had, that we've used, we've linked it here in the sources area. We've only tracked, however, the high alert types and the prime alert types. A high alert type is a minimum of 3 platoons on each faction, and of the 3 main factions, TR, NC, and VS. Correction, 3 to 4 platoons, I think, on each one, and then prime is 4+ platoons. Okay, so you may be wondering, okay, how is the first alert here a high alert when VS only had 94 people, and obviously 94 people is not 3 platoons? That's because it would have been offset by the NSO population. Now, for these calculations, we haven't included NSO too much, right? Because we're not looking at NSO players, we're looking at VS players. That's what we're looking at, right? We're looking at the people who are using the Orion, the Beetlejuice, right? The HV45, the Terminus, using the Mag Rider, using the Scythe, and we're trying to see whether or not VS is overpowered, or are we? Right? Because some people say, oh, okay, VS is overpowered, and they don't really qualify that. Well, I don't really want to get into that debate, okay? But I will say this. From the data, right, if VS was so overpowered, how come on the most active server is even before the Arsenal update, is VS played the least? If it was so OP, why isn't it played more by everyone? So I just want to put that out there. But like I say, our main focus for this kind of data collection / study was to find out the effect of the Arsenal update. Now, quick thanks to Eternal Rebel, who helped me compile all this data. He did a lot of data inputting while I did a lot of colouring in. So thank you. The data is actually on this page the 16th of March to 23rd of March, so about a week before the Arsenal update. And as we can see, right, we've got 37 alerts in total, 12 wins for VS, 12 wins for NC with a draw, and 12 wins for TR with a draw. The draw, of course, being this alert here, which if we quickly open it up, as you can see, it's 34% and 34%. The game would have decided the winner by whichever mechanism they use. And so what we could see is that there's also another thing we have to note about this alert. This one down here, it was only a 24-minute alert, and it's really rather strange. As you can see, 0132 to 0155. This is obviously in my time, so that's there was a time difference as well. So yeah, very strange, to be honest. And it looks like the whole map was open, so we're not too sure why the alert was only 23 minutes. No idea. Sorry, 24 minutes. Anyway, so essentially the trends are, right, despite often having the least amount of pop, VS are still putting up a good fight in the alerts. Okay, now I'm not a person who cares about alerts. I know that might seem weird considering I'm going off alert data, but I don't care about alerts. It's not actively part of what I do on either Emerald with B-Way or on Cobalt with Borg when I'm leading them, right? I'm mainly focused on the good fights. I don't really care. I know how to play alerts, etc., etc. I know how they work. But the reason why we're using alert data is because it's the only data I had available, really. Because Fisu only has the last hour, as far as I'm aware. From what I could tell, Voidwell only had really the last hour as well. So not really that useful when I wanted to do this kind of a look back. So thanks to, I think it's Maelstrom who made PS2 alerts. So thank you to him. Anyway, so as I was saying, VS have times where they have the most population. 3 times, in fact, out of these 37 alerts. And, a few times where, let's have it, 11 times where they had them, middle most pop. But 23 times where they had the lowest. So we could tell that, generally speaking, VS population was already lower than the other ones, than TR and C. So you may be thinking, okay, Dubnus, well, you said earlier that NSO population offsets them, and it does to an extent, but what we have to realize is that 2 of the major NSO outfits, Coffee and Sinks, they don't play on VS with their NSOs. They tend to play on NC or TR, not VS. So let's assume, they're 2 squads each. Well, still already, if they're going to different factions other than VS, already VS looks like they're going to be at a population disadvantage. So TR had the highest 14 times and NC had the highest 15 times. So these are kind of the basic trends. And again, I'll link this all in the description so you can see it all for yourself and make your own further analysis. But we're going to move forward to after the Arsenal update. So, what we have here is 39 alerts. Yes, that's correct. In a week's worth of time, from the 16th to 23rd, we were only able to pull 37 of these high and prime population alerts. In just from the 30th of March to the 4th of April, right? So basically 5 days worth of alerts. We were able to, thanks to the update, get 39. What this means is that the population overall of Emerald has been much healthier, thanks to the alert. Now, thanks to the Arsenal update. So VS, however, since the Arsenal update, which saw arguably NC and TR become even more powerful meta factions. Why are these meta factions? You know, who are you to say these are meta factions, right? Well, I recently, just yesterday, I casted the grand final of Lane Smash Season 7, and the factions which were used were TR and NC. And indeed, for the last 3 years that I've been playing, or casting, or you know, whatever, in Lane Smash, TR and NC have always been the meta faction. Why is this? Well, first of all, let's look at the Scythe. You know, the Scythe compared to the Reaver and the Mozzie it flies in a slightly different way, right? It also, more importantly, has less versatility. The rocket pods on the Scythe, the proton things, they're okay, and the PPA is okay, but nothing on a Banshee or an Airhammer. And a Mag Rider, well, against a Vanguard? I mean, come on, right? I mean, the Vanguard has a heavy shield, basically. That's the way I like to think of it. And then the other faction kind of specific things, right? I mean, the Lancer's okay, right? The Hawk is okay, and the Striker's incredible. For those who don't know, of course, those are the ground-to-air rocket launchers for the TR for the 3 different factions. And so, for those reasons and more, right? Just, you know, another reason, we'll throw maxes in, right? I like a blue shift max. I don't mind it. I find it quite fun sometimes. Would I prefer a scat max or a dual mercy max? 100% yes. So in my mind and in the mind, I think it's fair to say, of many people who are kind of, shall we say, more involved in, say, the kind of community smash stuff where kind of balancing is looked at under a bit of a microscope, it's clear that NC and TR are the meta factions. Now, after the Arsenal update, VS has had the highest population in these alerts 0 times. 0 times. Indeed, at 8 PM Eastern on Friday, even when B-Way was logged on, as if I recall correctly, the total population of VS was 30%, right? And the other 2 factions had 35-35. And that's the entire population of the server. So, you know, that's quite a distinct drop. You know, I haven't seen it that low in a while at prime time. And it was kind of one of the reasons which prompted me to make this video and gather all this data. VS has had, in this period, the lowest pop 35 times in comparison to the week long where it was only 23 times. That is kind of ridiculous, you know, and there are some alerts where they have the middlemost population, but still, it's, yeah. And indeed, they've only won 9 alerts, right, and only 4 of them were where they had the most, where they didn't have the least amount of population. And of course, you know, with certain ones, right, where there's been a big crash, such as here, we've noted it down. TR and NC have, however, been largely unaffected, except for in a positive way. where TR and NC were, had the highest population, 14 times for TR, 15 times for NC, in 37 alerts and 39 alerts after the Arsenal update. TR had the highest population 24 times and NC 22 times, compared to the VS having the highest pop 0 times. So, if VS is such an overpowered faction, as some people like to claim, how come no one plays on it? Right? It doesn't make a lot of sense. And then with the nerf of the Beetlejuice, right, 40 rounds in an LMG. And that's, I mean, yeah, okay, if you can use the heat mechanic effectively, then obviously you're going to have more than 40 rounds. But is that really going to match with, say, the Beetlejuice's equivalent on TR, which is, of course, the Butcher, where the Butcher naturally just has 150 rounds? Not really. And, myself personally, I've always preferred just using the Orion over the Butcher anyway. The Orion over the Beetlejuice anyway. Just because then I've actually got 50 bullets in a mag and not 40. So, with this data, it's clear to me that the feeling that I had, right, that VS, just like the VS player base, there's been lots of complaints, people feeling like, oh, VS is kind of really just nowhere near the meta anymore. It's kind of true. And in before people say, oh, it's because you run a VS outfit, the only reason B-Way plays on VS is literally just queue timers. We were going to play TR last Friday. And yet we couldn't get through the queues. And we're not going to sit on a continent where there's no one there, because otherwise we get blamed for ghost capping and, the ghost capping the off continent and farming new players. When in reality it's because, well, it's the only fight available to us if we then play TR, because we're not going to get through the queues. And so what we see is the VS faction on Emerald, at least, which again was the most active of the servers post Arsenal update. What we see is the VS just not being played as much, and of course, the NSO population wasn't really affected. It reached into triple figures somewhat more often, not a noticeable amount, hence why it's not been written down. So you don't have to write about NSO, but you have to wonder if VS is gonna really be a favourite to play on, right? I run B-Way, which plays on all factions, primarily VS, as I say. I run Bork, which is mainly TR. In Lane Smash, right, which is a combined arms format, which will probably be the most similar format to the upcoming Outfit Wars for Nexus, right? NC is just the most powerful because of the Max is the Vanguard and the versatile Reaver. So why play VS? There's not much point to. There's no gimmick, right? The Lasher, which was VS's kind of gimmick, is now just a glorified thumper, right? So we lose the heavy weapon. Obviously, NC has the jackhammer, which got a buff, by the way, and TR has the chain gun. So we don't have that. And in an update where, faction flare, etc., with the havoc with the different types of mines, uh, those mines don't, and they're not going to increase the population of VS, right? Because I would argue, ideally, right, that we want equal population for all three factions, and then NSO evenly distributed as well, in an ideal world, right? Because everyone wants to play the three factions at the same amount, and then people looking for a different kind of play style, a different flavor would go to NSO. And yet, we can see it's not working. You know? In a Prime Alert on Amrish, where TR has 261 players and VS has 180, it's almost ridiculous. So, lastly, I just want to go on to this. Now, this is more mathematical than I really understand. And I'm sure for people who are really interested into crunching numbers and whatnot, you can, have a field day with it. But I want to just draw our attention to the conclusion. We can be 95% confident, just based on this sample size and the data used, right? We can be 95% confident that the true proportion of times that VS was the lowest population faction has increased after the Arsenal update was released. So we know that VS was kind of the odd one out when it came to the Arsenal update, and this proves that VS population has suffered worse than TRNC populations, which in my mind is indicative of the VS being the weakest faction, and indeed, perhaps I'll make a video on, is VS really the weakest faction? But really it would be redundant because I've hit on the keynotes already in this video. In terms of the ESF, they have the worst one. Except for, of course, for the pancake, right? Which the NSO has, but still, right? Do they have the worst MBT? I don't even really classify the Chimera as an MBT. So if we don't classify the Chimera as an MBT, then again, they have, out of the main three factions, the worst MBT. They have the worst heavy weapon gun, right? And so, anti-infantry maxes, which is the most commonly used type of max, they have the worst maxes as well. So, is VS the worst faction? Maybe. Is VS now the least played faction on Emerald? Yes. Has it been made worse because of the Arsenal update? Also yes. Now I think the Arsenal update, by the way, was a good update by and large. It added some new things in. It added just, I don't want to say change for change's sake, right? But it did level the playing field, which I'm torn on. I don't know. I'm not too sure if it's a good thing or a bad thing. But I don't. But what I will say when I say that the Arsenal update was a good update, I'll say is it was good for population. It's brought the total population up, for sure, no doubt. Look how many 900s there are of this total population compared to afterwards. Never mind the fact we were able to get a week's worth of high and prime alert data in basically 3 days, thanks to the alert. So to conclude, VS population has suffered significantly after the Arsenal update. It's a lot lower than the other two factions. And is VS the worst faction? I don't know. Maybe. It's definitely got the least amount of players. And I haven't crunched the numbers, so I don't have proof that this is the same for the other servers. I would expect it to be so on every server except for maybe Soltech, where the meta is just wild. It's totally different, and it's that Soltech is a totally different server compared to Emerald, Cobalt, Miller, and Connery. I hope people have found this kind of video interesting. Yeah, I don't have it closed or anything. If it's interesting, let me know. If you liked it, also let me know. And feel free, by the way, to go to File when you open this and click Make a Copy, and use this data for whatever you want. I'll be releasing it in an uneditable form. Thank you, and goodbye.